Founded as a regional freight carrier in 1935, Ansett Airlines grew to become a juggernaut in the world of aviation, and then disappear into obscurity at the turn of the millennium. This is the story of Ansett Australia Airlines. The story of Ansett Airlines begins with Reginald Ansett, a road and railroad tycoon who quickly understood the potential future of air transport. Before the start of World War II, Ansett Airways established itself as a small regional freight transport service in 1935 and acquired a single Fokker Universal monoplane, which it operated until 1939 when 6 Lockheed Model 10 Electras were introduced into service. Ansett operated these aircraft as freight and passenger combi versions until they were eventually granted a passenger service license. The airline during the Second World War played a major role in transporting supplies and evacuating civilians from cities in northern Australia and providing logistics work for the military. After the war, Ansett received a total of 47 converted Douglas DC-3 aircraft and expanded to cover more cities in Australia, and received its first dedicated airliners such as the DC-4 and 6 and Convair 240. During this time, the airline adopted a red pinstripe and nose paint scheme with a red and black cursive font for the name. The livery, however, received some minor changes during the 1950s when a cheat line and a bold Ansett font was added. Fortunes for the airline were however set to change in the 1950s when Australian National Airlines, ANA, was on the verge of bankruptcy, and in order to prevent its competitor, Trans-Australian Airlines, from becoming a monopoly, Ansett was allowed to purchase ANA, and the new merger was renamed as Ansett ANA, making Ansett the second largest domestic airline in Australia. During this time, the airline also adopted newer turboprop aircraft which it called the Golden Jet series. These included Lockheed Electras and Vickers Viscounts, and the airline also operated several specialty aircraft including the PBI Catalina and short Sandingram amphibian aircraft, helicopters such as the Sikorsky Seaguard and S-61 Bell 47, as well as large transporters such as the DHC Caribou and ATL-98 Carvair. The airline by this stage was quickly dominating the Australian airline transport market, and by 1964 received its first jet-powered airliner, a Boeing 727-100, which was called the Fanjet series. Due to its rising popularity, the airline eventually dropped the Ansett ANA branding in 1968 and switched to a bold red Ansett typeface with a Delta intense red or white logo, and added Douglas DC-9 and Boeing 737-200s by the 1970s, and in 1981 the logo received a redesign in the form of a flat, dark blue modern serif font, which was adopted until 1990. By this time, Ansett Group was partially acquired by the logistics giant TNT, and Ansett Air Cargo operated as a separate entity. In 1987, Ansett established Ansett New Zealand as a subsidiary of the main Australian airline. At the same time, Air New Zealand acquired shares of Ansett Airlines after purchasing TNT's 50% stake in the company. But this move forced Ansett to divest from its New Zealand subsidiary to prevent the creation of a monopoly. By the 1990s, although shaken up by the Air New Zealand investment, Ansett Airlines discussed plans of expanding beyond the oceanic region, and instead started offering flights to Indonesia, Hong Kong, Japan, Thailand, and other major international hubs, and the airline expanded to lease Airbus A300 and Boeing 767s, and later expanded to include Boeing 747-300 and 400 versions, which received the Ansett Spaceship branding. Several regional turbofan and turboprop aircraft, such as the Saab 340, British Aerospace 146, CRJ200 and the Airbus A320-200 series, were added to the airline, which at its peak operated more than 100 aircraft directly or through its acquired subsidiaries. The airline also received a mid-life livery change in the form of Ansett being replaced by Ansett Australia, which remained until 1994. The airline in 1994 adopted a new livery with a white star and yellow letter A and a more ornate serif type font. This stayed on with the airline, and starting in the late 1990s started displaying the Sydney 2000 Olympics logo after Ansett applied to become the official airline partner for the event. The airline by this time operated 4 major subsidiaries for regional flights. These included Kendal, Aeropelican, SkyWest and Holselton Airlines. The airline, although reputed as being a pioneer of adopting innovative strategies and technologies such as online reservations, was soon feeling the pressure of growing low-cost carriers as well as pressure from its newly restructured rival Trans-Australian Airlines, who took on the name Qantas. Also, operating costs for its large fleet was also causing financial issues, and in February 2000, Ansett was provided a government subsidy to keep them operational, and Air New Zealand offered a $500 million cash injection and eventual purchase of the airline fully. But these talks never fully materialised. During these talks, Ansett went on a major asset stripping of old aircraft, selling off its subsidiaries and cost-cutting measures, but these were still not enough to prevent the collapse of Ansett. After the Australian government refusing to bail out the Giant and Air New Zealand cash injection being stalled, Ansett Airlines announced its closure on the 4th of March 2002, with the final flight taking place on the 5th of March, ending a legacy of this truly iconic airline from the land down under.
Most unrestrained emotion for thousands of Ansett staff as some cried and others drowned their sorrows. When the last flight touched down in Sydney this morning, Ansett passed into aviation history.